How's this? How's this?
The Scrivener's office is on the phone as well.
Oh, great. Right, Lauren, I know Zach's going to be speaking today, right?
Yes, he is.
Great, thanks. And Monica with AT&T, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Everything well in LA?
So far, so good.
So I'll just spend the rest of the call saying hi to everybody. And we'll get John Gustafson from Bitwise. Are Bitwise still opening, and Bitwise is still opening in September, right?
So my understanding is building is going to be open and operational fourth quarter. And then we have work from home for employees until the end of the calendar year, but we will be opening up whatever that looks like according to city guidelines. So we're building right now, active construction, and then we're just going to continue to take a conservative approach in terms of occupancy at that point.
Well, we're hoping to have a board meeting there in September, but that's probably not going to happen.
That is something that we'll have to talk to Jake and Amy about. I don't want to make any promises that are going to get me in trouble at a later date.
Okay. Well, we'll wait about another 1 minute, and then we're going to have the kickoff. Actually, Merrick will be giving a presentation about the B3K initiative. And then Merrick, I'll be making you the host so that you can present your slide deck.
Okay.
So why don't I do that? I'm going to find you on here and then I'll give you the floor. Let's see.
Can't you tell? You can.
Oh, Kern County.
Relative proximity. Let's just call it Southern California area. No, I'm actually I'm in Redlands because my in-laws are in Redlands, and my wife and my kids had gotten really tired of being trapped in DC and said, we come out here every year during the summer at some point, and they were desperate. So we boarded a plane yesterday and arrived in Southern California.
Well, Kern County is part of Southern California, but you know that, right?
Yes. I am. Oh, Richard, let's get into the geographic challenges of your region, shall we? Right away.
Well, great. Well, let's get started. Thank you all for coming today. I think we have about 40 people that have registered, and we have really good attendance these virtual meetings. But of course, we can't wait till we all can get together in person. So we know everybody that's on the call, so probably won't do introductions, but if you want to see the list of, I think, the 40 people, if there's that option. And so let's see, without further ado, we'll have Merrick, is it Gutman?
Yes.
I don't want to butcher your name. And, I've always been impressed by Brookings. He did not tell me to say this, but I'm going to. I've always been impressed by Brookings Institution. I used to walk by there almost every day when I was to school there. And just the gravitas, their research, we've used it a lot in terms of their Metro Monitor, the rankings for Kern County, as well as for entrepreneurship, growth of young firms. And so we're excited to have them at the table. You may have known their work, the Fresno Drive Initiative, also up in Sacramento and Inland Empire. And I know you've done some work in Seattle, and probably not to bash Seattle, but I think you probably sense we're a little bit more collaborative here. So I'll let Merrick, senior fellow at Brookings Institution, talk about the B3K initiative.
Yeah, so first, show of hands, how many of you have already heard about this B3K prosperity effort? A couple, okay.
I'm supposed to raise my hand.
And then, hands down, show of other hands, how many of you think you actually know what it's all about at the moment? Perfect. Okay, so this is the introduction to it, and as Richard said, if you're not familiar with Brookings, just really quickly, think tank, yes, in DC, But part of the interesting element being with Brookings for about 10 plus years now is that we started to try and take what you think of as a think tank with regard to research, analysis, and putting out thick papers with content, hoping somebody does something about it, is working directly with places, especially around city region competitiveness issues and growth and vitality, and trying to take the knowledge being generated, the ideas being generated, but co-produce actual solutions through pilot projects, working with cross-sector coalitions of business, government, and civic organizations in regions, and then kind of sharing what we learn in a guidebook, codified way, and then trying to replicate and refine what we've learned from working with places. So it's actually trying to have greater amounts of impact. And as Richard said, in lots of places in the U.S. and some internationally as well, and a lot of interaction with California, many of which turned out really well, and some of which not as good. But that's all part of the process of trying to figure out how to do better. And so I'll talk a little bit more about what the process looks like and our philosophy at the end of this. But this is the introduction to Brookings. I'm going to share my screen now, and hopefully this will work, and you'll get a quick deck. I don't want to talk too much. I'm going to go through this pretty rapidly, because I think that's a lot more productive to have kind of questions and a little bit of conversation on this. If I can get my access to start the deck, and go. All right. So just a set of principles as we're going into B3K, which is really a response to your economic success in the region. Two core things that we think about. One is what drives economic competitiveness and what are the inputs for that. And we look at this in there's 5 different elements. The most important 3, the ones that really generate economic competitiveness outcomes, are traded sectors as opposed to locally serving sectors, talent, and innovation assets. And then supporting those, but not in and of themselves able to generate economic success at the broadest scale, are what infrastructure assets that has, including broadband and connectivity and so on. And then governance, which is the potential for collaboration across different entities, but also really important between the business community and the public sector. So those are how we break down a lot of analyses and where you can intervene for better outcomes. The second is, and this is particularly interesting in your region in a different way from other places, is the economy doesn't work at the local jurisdiction scale. It functions at a functional economic area where all these different elements relate to each other, whether there's sectors or businesses that are tied together because they share particular innovation activities, or your workforce is shared, and all these different things that really are beyond the indivisible boundaries of your jurisdictions or your responsibilities in economic development directly. And they involve a lot of other levers, obviously, around workforce and transportation investments and so on that are supportive of it that you don't control directly. So we always look at is this regional scale for the economy, even though individual economic development organizations and actors are responsible and accountable for particular things within the areas for which they are funded to act. So those are the 2 kind of underlying entry points that we look at. And one of the key questions for us in working in your region is the differences and similarities or connectivity between the greater Bakersfield economic hub and East KERN. And that's been very clear from the start. And what we're doing right now is a lot of analysis to look at the comparisons. And we looked at, obviously, the East KERN diversification study, which was really good as a starting point. But we just put that out right out front, that we recognize there are differences in the way the economy works, but it's always at that kind of regional area to be defined. A couple of quick points, and we can share this deck with you so you can get into it. But there are some big things that have been impacting on the economic trajectory of places. One is the impacts of globalization. Second is this agglomeration effect that maybe you've read some of our stuff, that there's this sucking out into big metro areas of most innovative activities and growth. And then the second tier cities that are being sucked from are also sucking from the hinterlands or the third tier cities. So you've got this kind of pipeline where you have a couple of big winners, and it's kind of all the assets are being concentrated in those areas. This makes a really difficult competitive environment, especially the impact of globalization and more city regions competing against each other and more visible in the international and domestic marketplaces. Third is this rapid changes in technology, and fourth is shifting demographics and what that means for what the profiles of different workforce areas look like. In particular, greater diversity in the non-white populations who tend to have lower levels of educational attainment, and what that means for your workforce. All that stuff is impacting at a national level bunch of outcomes that are challenges. One is that you've got a lot of focus and growth in the high end of the economy that's really good wages, and then you have a lot of growth in the lower end of the economy with lower wages and difficulty for families to reach self-sufficiency, and you have this hollowing out of middle-income jobs, which are, you don't need the 4-year degree, but you need at least a high school degree. And so that's impacted on how everybody does. And this is the sense about how the economy is performing for all residents in a place. So you may have seen stats that Raj Chetty and his crew have done about economic mobility on the decline, the likelihood you're going to do better than your parents. And it's spread out around the country, has different impacts around the country in terms of greater or lesser economic mobility. So that's performance for individuals and families. And what it's done is it has actually influenced economic performance. I should include in here a slide that shows if you actually have greater economic mobility, do better, you're a place. So there's a business case for economic mobility and not just a social and moral agenda to it, or corporate social responsibility to it. So what does that mean? Well, for a lot of places, it's about shifting from, or expectation shifting from what traditionally economic developers are measured on, which is job counts. Are we adding jobs to the local economy? And the pressure's always on for that to be the metric of success and reported on a more rapid basis. And it also kind of shifts what things that economic developers focus on, because some things are easier to count or hold yourselves accountable for. So that's been the primary metric. But because the economy is performing in these different ways, there are, as Richard said, we put out a couple of years ago now, a more comprehensive set of measures for whether economies are performing well for people, for both firms and business and residents, beyond job counts. And so that's where prosperity, which is really about your productivity and success of firms so that they're growing and adding value in the economy. And then this issue of inclusion, which is inclusion has become kind of a loaded word in a lot of places. It's become a political term. But by inclusion, what we really mean is that we're dealing with all the range of demographics, but whether it's race and gender or educational attainment and age within that U-shaped graph that I showed you. And so you're looking at, this is a snapshot of how the region performs against its set of, there's very different economies around the country. So we're clumping it together in terms of size. And you have a lot of growth, clearly, except in the business dynamism category. But overall, the productivity issues in certain ways are just driven by economic mix. And the inclusion issues there's a lot of underperformance pegged against this group of peers. And you can argue whether that's the right one or not. But these metrics, there's kind of like middling to low, just on the existing economy. And then when you break down that racial inclusion question, it's interesting because we rate really well as a region in terms of the gap between white and people of color. but it reflects some underlying issues in the economy. And I think that reflects a lot of what's going on in oil and gas in particular, where you have a closing of that gap in particular categories, but it's as much an improvement for non-white populations as it is a reduction or flattening of performance for white populations. So it's really the numbers about how well you rate in terms of relative performance is indicating some underlying issues that are really about the economy as a whole. So,
and blame on the economy.
What's that? Somebody said something about you can blame it on the economy. There are other factors involved in that clearly as well. So, but I'm just giving a picture about how to look at the numbers. And we can get into the conversations about all those underlying questions, but just kind of, again, showing a snapshot of where we see the region is and just tons of other data we're pulling together. So, the performance of the region also reflects these inputs that I mentioned in terms of talent and innovation and demographics and educational attainment. And these are obviously things that you all are probably painfully aware of and are grappling with in the overall economic regions. All that have emerged from our conversations over the past couple of months coming in and testing whether to be collaborating in this problem-solving way with the region. And one is just grappling with the economic disruptions and better long-term regional competitiveness based on your economic mix, especially some of the issues that are being dealt with in Bakersfield around, and some extent in East KERN around agriculture and oil and gas. The East KERN economy obviously has other assets and economic characteristics. And then the second question is job quality and getting beyond the job counts. So how do you focus on that? And that ties into workforce decisions. So what emerged from and what inspired all of this, principally, we were contacted originally from the KERN Community Foundation because of work we're doing around California on these questions, was this kind of objective that bringing together in the way I described a collaborative among business, government, civic organizations to think about growth and opportunity strategies for the region and to help everybody who's involved, whether it's the economic development practitioners and all the other stakeholders that I mentioned, to have just a common understanding of what objectives are trying to be hit and working together, aligning your efforts a little bit more tightly to maximize your resources and effort, which are all constrained. This has been happening in a bunch of places. Adapted to the sort of local circumstances, just tossed up a number of regions around the country and different organizations that are leading the cause, but there are all kinds of these cross-sector collaboratives. And when you look at the California examples of what Inland Empire's done versus what Fresno's doing versus what Sacramento does, it all looks very different. So it's kind of tailored to the local circumstances, and they all have strengths and weaknesses out of the process. But just wanted to flag this is a thing that's happening, in a number of places around the country to try and organize efforts in these ways. And then what's distinctive about this in particular? Number one is because we are who we are, we're not consultants. So we're not coming in, doing analysis, doing a bunch of interviews, writing up some strategy that's at a reasonably high level and handing it over in a couple of weeks and saying, this is what you should do, good luck. It's as much a process and a locally driven effort around consensus as it is that kind of analysis and coming up with the good solutions. So it's because everybody's got to buy in and be committed to it. So first is getting an understanding about these kind of new principles and objectives for economic development. And everybody's going to have different perspectives on this, but putting that whole set of outcomes out there. Second is not to silo off or to support existing efforts that are about bringing economic development practice in, along with all of the other things that actually help you do your jobs in terms of good economic outcomes, and ensuring that there's that kind of that people are not working in isolation of each other and holding different metrics, and that it's at the appropriate regional scale. Third is, again, as I already said, this is about joint problem solving, and it's going to be sustained beyond publishing a strategy. So you create not just a strategy document, but actual tactics, operational commitments by the different participants, and a governance structure. It's not really about it's managing distributed implementation and holding each other accountable and measuring performance. And the final part is that, though the research and analysis and things that we're doing, bringing outside perspectives in from other practitioners, is about like informing you all about things that are going on, and we stick around. We're going to stick around for at least a year here, so it's not in and out, and it's about building up local capacity to keep things going and connect with all these other places that are doing some of this work that may be transferable to you all, and teach them what you're learning and and learn from them. So we've organized around a couple of different stages. The ones we're focused on, obviously, is this kind of organizing the effort, this discovery phase that we're in now, which is about market assessment, including quantitative and qualitative analysis. We're having a steering committee intro. This is really hard, obviously, remotely. I mean, it would be fantastic to be actually sitting in a room with you all, seeing whether you're smiling and nodding or shaking your head you're from the DC, what the hell are you talking about? But try to do that and engage folks, because we have to have buy-in versus introducing something to them and saying, go do this. And then move into strategy and governance activities, which is about taking the findings from the analysis and then creating working groups with very diverse perspectives to address those findings into what I described as tactics and operational commitments, which is like the implementation phase. And what we're organizing around, this is a really rough diagram, is this big steering committee with a lot of these perspectives, which are providing crowdsourced input. Then there's an executive committee of around 25 folks who are representative of the steering committee perspectives, who are trying to provide ongoing input and represent their interests and guide the process and give feedback to it. There's a core kind of like team that you're accountable to on a weekly basis. And East KERN, aside from Richard's participation and Teresa's participation, in that there's not a particular representative of East KERN's collective in that at the moment. And then you've got these kind of functional activities. The project team is doing the day-to-day stuff of getting this thing actually done. A research committee, which is made up of academic and other in public sector and some other association in local perspectives, and then carry this on into performance measurements and tracking. And so there's the more robust local capacity for this kind of economic development decision making. And then, as I mentioned, these working groups that will emerge in the strategic planning process based upon what we actually find. Last points here, what's happening right now. So I mentioned already, we're organizing, we're continuing to do this outreach. We've got a whole data collection and analysis that includes some really interesting, some standard stuff that any consultant would come in and do. And we don't want to repeat work with that, but also some proprietary kind of different looks at this, including an opportunity industries analysis that looks at job quality generation by sectors and subsectors and occupations and who holds those jobs to get a better feel for how the economy is working and where you can put effort around foundational or emerging industry areas. We're doing a lot of qualitative outreach, and we'd love to talk to more of you all about what's happening in your places and your perspectives on these things, particularly as we get deeper into the actual deeper knowledge base, organizing that. The county chamber, the county supporting the chamber is doing a kind of public opinion survey, and then we're also gathering up examples of kind of, we call them sort of found pilots of initiative ideas or existing programs, particularly because if you could scale up, if this can highlight, if we come into our findings and see things that are already working but are not at scale, we don't need to reinvent stuff. We need to reinforce what's already working well in the region. And then finally, I mentioned the research committee. So there may be some particularly good people who are really focused on research who would like to participate in that and develop the kind of collective across the county who is organizing, because there is no center of gravity for this kind of like ongoing economic research activity as there are in some other regions. All right, I am done. There's lots of detail we could provide. Wanted to try and give an introduction get feedback. I may have missed things that are really important to you all. And we are completely blunt and candid as part of being the think tank as opposed to consultants. We do not have to make everybody happy, and we'll speak the truth as we see it. But we're also really open to getting feedback on what we've gotten wrong. So I'm just going to turn it back over to you, Richard, and just open it up.
Unmute myself. Yes, if there are questions from our comments.
I've beaten everyone into submission.
I can jump in. This is Monica Skelton representing Rio Tinto US Borax. I'm sure all you guys know my...
Oh. I think you're on mute. Can you hear? Yeah, I think.
I'm back.
Okay, go ahead. Oh,
Sorry, I don't know what happened. Anyway, I'm filling in the role of Mary Beth Garrison while she's on extended leave. I think, Richard, we talked on the phone before, but here I am. This is me. So nice to meet all of you guys. I think the obvious question that I wanted to ask is, how is your plans for this rollout and implementation affected by COVID-19 and kind of the tough situation we're finding ourselves in California?
Yeah, that's a great question to get all the time. And here's our perspective on the impact. Number one, what's happened with COVID has not fundamentally altered the principles of economic competitiveness and the inputs to it. What it has done is, it will continue to do, is accelerate certain trends that we see and maybe offer up disruptions in particular opportunity areas. So, the discussion about what supply chain and manufacturing opportunities look like in terms of a reconcentration or regionalization of those activities, or a redundancy or resiliency to those that don't put all of the eggs in the Asian basket. The impact on the acceleration of automation and recoveries that we see all of the time. So which exposed areas might see a more rapid introduction of automation, displacement of what people have been doing before, because you won't hire those kinds of workers back. And what is the open question about what's the real issue on remote work and what opportunities were created there. And a personal point of view at the moment is it's a regional dispersion opportunity, but not kind of a national dispersion opportunity. So there's still a concentration. We see that in talking to businesses all the time, that there's definitely an off-campus option, but it can't be like, I'm going to go live in Idaho now. So those are the kinds of impacts and just kind of segments that are definitely impacted. But the core issues about what's your innovation activity and assets look like, what's your talent base doing, and which are your traded sectors to emphasize on growing, all that remains exactly the same as it was before. So there's really a question of in places that have done this work, it's a question of explaining how to stay the course versus somehow pivot in a panic that COVID's happened. I mean, we've been through significant economic downturns very recently, not quite the same as this, right? But the principles of what makes the economy grow and what makes it competitive and what generates better quality jobs remain the same. Does that answer your question reasonably?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. Thanks for all that information. Of course, this is the first time I'm hearing all of this, so it's very interesting, and it seems like it's really well placed, in fact, to be providing more data and everything as part of our regional development. So going to be watching this space as you guys move forward. Thanks.
Merrick, I made you the host, so can you unhost yourself?
Sure. I thought I could figure out.
I love your slides, but I'm sure.
I figured out how to do that. That'd be great.
Yeah, click on yours and just.
Yeah, I stopped sharing screen, right?
Well, you're called the host now, so if you look on the right-hand side under participants.
Right.
So
okay, I will.
Merrick, if you click on Richard's name, it should pop up and like with the blue thing on the right side, and it'll say make host.
All right, I'm not giving up my power. As I look for Richard's name, it would be interesting if anybody who had like a critique. I heard a kind of painful process of people talking to each other and getting buy-in from people who have very different points of view to actually execute on this. So there's kind of like a Goldilocks moment that's been an issue. Second is just like the institutional capacity of a place and how things are set up. So in some places that have been less successful, particularly on the implementation side, there hasn't been a center of gravity and kind of a credibility of an organization to take hold of this and incubate it. Sort of distrust in regions between different actors who were saying, well, I get paid to deliver this, and my political leadership or my investors need to show progress around this activity for which I am responsible. It's just like a fundamental challenge of whatever you do. But the willingness or the center of gravity kind of infrastructure is always a challenge. I think those are actually the big ones. The strategies that emerge, I always feel pretty confident that if you get past the parochialism and I'm invested in this is my project, and the politics of things, that the strategies that emerge from this kind of an effort are always solid. And we've seen the final one I should mention is related to that. It's patience, right? Because in a year, you're not going to see results that are real. But 3 years, and then 5 years, and even more like 8 years, you do see really substantial changes. But people have to be committed, recognize that you don't change economic trajectories and how things are working for people in a short period of time. This is the years of assets and certain specialties that you have, and how things work, and the behaviors of firms, and the behaviors of intermediaries. So the patience and stick-to-itiveness issue is big, and that's partly goes back to this buy-in problem of everybody working toward measurable goals that are big picture. I think Kansas City is a great example of this. Some big dots that they work toward in terms of these performance areas for economic success that are a little bit beyond the growth metrics, and then intermediate areas of, let's take bites of incremental progress that we can show from particular initiatives that we're betting on to move toward those big dots. And then how do you compare yourselves internally and against what kinds of peers externally, so that you can see that you're having an actual result. Those are the core issues that we tend to grapple with. And of course, we get better at like providing ideas, and things evolve over time. So I won't say it's all along the regions. It's really about this collaborative effort.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Merrick and your team, Rachel and Elizabeth. So any other questions before we move forward?
Would it be possible to, Richard, have you send a copy of Mr. Gutman's presentation?
Yes, that
Sure.
would be.
Yep,
Great, thank you.
for sure. And again, if any of you all, there's only so much capacity, so I don't want to overpromise anything. But we're happy to talk to groups of you all again as you're thinking through this stuff, reactions, individuals. There's, as I said, there's going to be a lot of input. Sometimes it's better to wait for some of the data to come out in front, which show you the pictures and you can react to that. But if you have, and we're going to be soliciting those kind of programmatic ideas about what works and so on, or things you think we should take a look at. But but this is really again a candid and collaborative process of joint problem solving. So we are really wide open to talking very candidly and off the record with any of you all to make sure that this is clear in terms of the outcomes and inclusive in terms of managing all the different stakeholder interests toward something that works for as many people as possible.
And I know you have a larger slide deck, but we didn't have 2 hours today. So did you have a larger one that I should send to the group?
Yeah, why don't you share this one, and then we can, as we go through, there's a lot of details. So if anybody in particular is really interested in like what the opportunity industries analysis looks like, we try to multiple times try to avoid oversharing and just being like overwhelming in terms of level of detail at a point when we don't actually have all of the analysis is specific to you all. So
great. Well, thanks. I'm sure you're coming up to Kern County this weekend, so thanks again. And we will update we meet every 2 months, so perhaps there can be an update when we meet in September.
Yeah, and hopefully some of you all will be involved in this process long before then. So just express interest. Let Richard know, and he'll feed it through, and we'll get back with you all.
Thanks, Merrick.
Okay.
Safe travels. Great. Well, now I have some slides too, if I can figure this out. Slideshow. Hopefully everybody can see. Can everybody see this?
Yep.
Great. I'll go through this. I will not. I'll take as much time as I had planned, but just wanted to go through kind of the state of the county. Looking at our unemployment, the numbers for May came out recently, and they actually dropped. The blue line you can see dropped about from 18.6 to 18.3. This is the whole county. We were projected to have 30% unemployment when some of the forecasts came out in March, April. We're at about 2 to 3% lower than LA. So that is a positive. But again, the June numbers will come out in about 2 weeks. You can see this little fuzzy, but this is Kern County, Bakersfield MSA. Year over year, so looking at how our industry sectors doing versus our competitors, and you can see construction still. And this is May versus this year versus last year. Construction, we're ranked second in the country out of the top 50, I believe, 3 metros, and as well as mining and logging, which is Golden Queen, Rio Tinto, as well as oil are included in that. That's rebounded, and then the others are kind of in the middle. Obviously, healthcare has been impacted in terms of folks not having elective surgery, so forth. Again, Kern County data. We have there's a dashboard called tracktherecovery.org. They have various different indicators, and this is for our county, showing job postings as a sign of economic vitality, and we're the blue line. So our actually job postings have decreased much less versus in January. U.S. is down about 14.5%. We're down about 6%, and you can see some of the major events that occurred.
Hello,
and
this is my time.
Okay.
Oh, I think. Do you have any questions or no? So you can see this is kind of this is a total tracktherecovery.org. If you want to check out that website to see how quickly, hopefully, we bounce back. This looks at consumer spending, and again, you can see where, in terms of relative to the state, doing much better. many of the reasons
I don't
that
know.
were.
So what? It was the
I think Rebecca, are you on the?
right? And then okay.
Rebecca,
And then like for the TV, I guess just like any specification.
I think we're getting somebody. Let me see. Rebecca. Oh, yeah, thanks. Okay, let me go back. So this just shows you consumer spending relative to California, and I believe we showed this slide before, but this shows. So this is according to Tamara, looking at economic vulnerability and Kern County. You can see Kern County, and we were at the time out of 380 metros or / counties ranked as the 13th least vulnerable due to the fact of our economic diversity. A lot of the counties or regions hit hardest were tourism based. Hawaii, I think, was number 1. Honolulu, Orlando, number 2. But we have that diverse economy, and obviously much of the diversity is because of what's happening in East Kern. So we talk in the economic development world about social distancing versus physical distancing, and so as we maintain our contacts, albeit in different ways through Zoom, how do we strengthen our bonds? Much like the attendance here today, that's kind of the plus side, is that we have record attendance, and how do we keep that momentum going? Looking at in terms of site selection, a lot of these slides we presented at our board meeting the other week. When do site selectors anticipate activity to increase again? And most of them think that the last quarter of 2020 or the first quarter of 2021. We've seen a significant uptick in projects over the last couple of weeks. There was a lull, but and there are many reasons which I'll talk about why I think East Kern is especially well positioned. What are the most active functions post-COVID? And a lot of those are the warehouse, that distribution chain, supply chain, production. There's an anticipated 400 to 500 million square feet of new logistics warehousing, and that's based on 5% increase in inventory, 400 to 500 million. So definitely opportunity as well as with production. And during this time, business retention is critical. Most folks, our local companies going to stay home? Are they going to be in business? And I know we just secured some EDA funding to do a county-wide business visitation program with manufacturers. So we're going to be rolling that out in the next 8 to 9 months. And you can see in terms of attraction, still important, but right now it's making sure that our local companies are getting the resources that they need. I'm sure Kelly's going to talk about what they're doing. And then in this time, what do these corporate real estate execs want to hear? Well, updates on market conditions, new approaches to support major employers. We have the KERN recovery program and other very innovative mechanisms to support retention and expansion. So we're seeing, and this $1 trillion economy, which we talked to Merrick and his team about, this LA Basin, looking up here for the future proofing of operations, de-risking the supply chain. Obviously, automation is going to be at a premium, and then short term, being able to provide that supply kind of just in time, if you will, type of philosophy. And as we look at what we are focused on during the recovery, kind of in line with talking about retention, expansion, but also entrepreneurship. I'll talk a little bit about Kite, and then resuming and ramping up business attraction and lead generation activities. We actually, the goal I think for everybody is we need to not cut back on marketing, because these are definitely, I think, good opportunities for Kern County. Talked about the KERN recovery program, and I know there's still, I think, about 7 million out of that 25 million that is still left in that fund. So that's an important program. Business enhancement. In 2009, our EDC, we were a partner on a visitation program throughout the county. We visited, actually talked about 256 companies on all industry sectors. So again, if your local companies aren't doing well, then it's going to be very tough to bring in new investment. So this is something that it will be a priority for us. Kite, you all are familiar with that. We're supposed to be in East Kern in September. We'll see if that happens. But the 4 pillars of KITE are guiding. These are new opportunities. I know we have many. We'll talk about our recent virtual roundtable, funding, spaces, talent, guidance. We had our future co-working roundtable on the 30th, and we had Nikki Cummings in Tehachapi with the Village Co. and Justin Powers. I know you're on the call with KERN Co-works, Bitwise, as well as the Mesh Co-work. Really talking about the opportunities that co-working is, remote work, co-working. Excited about that being one of the legs of stool for us. As we work to promote the region, one of the things we will be premiering or debuting is we're contracting with a group called Local Intel, where we have the ability dashboard updated on an ongoing basis to talk about Kern County's vibrant industries and how we're doing versus our competitors. So that will be premiering soon. Our strategic plan, we just released at our board meeting 2 weeks ago. Really happy just on, what are we doing on retaining, recruiting, entrepreneurship, creating that sustainable funding, and we have metrics accountable too. So that is kind of the document that's leading the future of Kern ABC. This is something from the state, CALED, California Association of Local Economic Development. Why should communities invest in economic development? And kind of the elevator speech. So that's something that we are using to promote our activities, and this will affect all the county, East Kern as well. But Hard Rock last night, they had the Bureau of Indian Affairs had the hearing. I don't know if there was any opposition, as long as I heard. But again, that $600 million project, 2,000 permanent jobs, about 1,200 construction, indirect induced. And as I said last night, it's about new money. This new money that's going to come in to Kern County, I think it's going to all of Kern County. Again, will benefit the LA Basin, Bay Area, staycations, right? Or folks are not necessarily getting on planes to go to Vegas or other points. And so I think this is very well positioned to bring in new money. And especially an iconic name like Hard Rock. And so this is something that we're excited about in terms of how we all promote our region, kind of the new California. And then finally, our foundation, we just had a kickoff today with SoCal Gas. I know covers a lot of East Kern. It's fueling the communities initiative, and that's going to be providing thousands of meals to restaurants will benefit, as well as senior citizens, etc., for that program. So we'll be hearing about that, called Fueling Our Communities. So that is my report, and I will take this off the screen. Any questions, comments? Great. Next we have Teresa Hitchcock with the county. I think I saw Teresa.
Sorry, Richard. I had to unmute myself.
Okay.
So I just really want to quickly cover the PPE program that the county has set up. As Richard said, one of the county's biggest drivers is really to support existing businesses and make sure that they can make it through this extremely challenging time. And one of the things that we heard on a number of calls that the Board of Supervisors held with different businesses was that access to protective equipment was limited, that they couldn't actually even purchase these supplies. So the county, through their purchasing channels, has done some mass purchasing and set up 16 different distribution sites throughout the county. Those do include distribution sites in East Kern for businesses. Those distribution sites are at the Lake Isabella ETR office, also at the Rosamond Branch Library, at the Ridgecrest ETR office, and at the Tehachapi Vets Administration Building, so that East Kern businesses can access some of this protective equipment in order to help their business stay open. Some of the things that we're distributing include masks, the disposable face masks, vinyl gloves, disinfectant wipes, and gel hand sanitizer. A lot of those things are required for businesses to have folks come into their business. And again, they were having difficulty accessing some of those things. Also, if businesses are looking at recruiting, we are having a number of businesses who are recruiting at this time. Recruiting is taking a very different track. We're doing a lot of recruitments virtually through Zoom and other virtual medium, and our job developers would be happy to set that up for any business that's looking to recruit right now in order to make sure that they can actually screen a large number of applicants safely and through some of these virtual services. Richard?
Any questions for Teresa? Great, thanks, Teresa. Kelly Bearden is calling in from Modesto. Kelly, are you out there?
Yes, and my 87-year-old mother told me to tell you hi.
Oh, wow. Well, didn't she have a birthday recently?
Yes, in February.
Okay. Okay, well, how are you doing? You're representing your CSUB with your flag?
As always, out of the School of Business and Public Administration at CSUB. So at the Sbdc, to cut the small chat, Richard, but at the Sbdc, there's been a lot of activity, obviously, with the devastation to the small businesses community everywhere. And we've been doing probably about 3 times the number of consulting that we did in a given month at a time last year. So our consultant team, which is about 15 individuals that are self-employed independent contractors, are extraordinarily busy and staying busy. And also, we're continuing with our webinar series. For those that attended yesterday, we had Jim Zervis from the county on talking about KERN Recover, something that we've promoted actively over the last several weeks. And to kind of back up Teresa's point about the importance of PPE, yesterday we did a poll of which, during the webinar, of which we had over 100 respondents, and over 80% of them said PPEs, getting PPEs in their Kern County small businesses was either somewhat important or important. So maybe I should have thrown very important in there, but didn't do that. So 4 out of 5, can't beat that, I don't think, in any survey that you do. So we're continuing to work with a lot of clients. We're continuing to really push the disaster loan through SBA. All the publicity seems to be focused on the PPP program, or excuse me, the PPE. Yeah, PPP. I get them confused all the time. But the PPP program that you've heard so much about, which has been basically $500 billion to businesses across the country. But really, we see the lifeline for small businesses tied to the SBA's disaster loan program, which is called EIDL. And for a while, it was closed. There's been over 4.5 million applicants in the program. There's still 2 million that haven't even been responded to as SBA digs through that. But with the PPP program, we've seen small businesses that have been able to kind of cover the resiliency for a while. But really, the longer term is going to be there. And also, the KERN Recovers loan program has been really instrumental for a lot of our businesses that did not get in on PPP. So that program, Jim reported yesterday, it has only about 25% of the funds left. And for the first time this week, started accepting funds or applications from those that receive PPP funds. So, but only in select industries that have been now closed, have been forced or mandated to close by the state at least twice. So we know those, the bars, the restaurants, etc. So that is, we'll be back for our 18th consecutive webinar next Wednesday, and keep assisting small businesses. The only other thing I have to add is, with the pandemic, we weren't able to hold our Central California region Sbdc awards luncheon this year in Fresno. And that usually occurs during the week of Small Business Week in May, the first week in May. So whereas we didn't have a business for the first time in several years in Eastern Kern County that was a recipient, we did have, as far as a champion stakeholder, we had Greg Garrett from the city of Tehachapi. and a lot of the close work that the SBDC has done over the years being rewarded with the city of Tehachapi. So wanted to congratulate Greg, and we hope to get him some type of ceremony and some type of awards ceremony moving forward, but can't do it now. So that's all I got.
Well, Kelly, can you get a sturdier desk for your next presentation? I'm getting a little seasick.
I think that was another earthquake.
Okay. Not funny. Okay. So, moving on. District 1. Anybody from mixed district? Okay. District 2, Zach, I think I saw you earlier today.
Hey, Richard.
Hey,
Thanks.
Zach.
Hey, it's good to be here. Good to see everybody. I'm looking at my notes and I want to hit some things that Richard or Kelly didn't already mention that I was planning on discussing as well. Just something that I wanted to reiterate on the small business forgivable loan program through KERN Recovers. As Kelly said, there's 25% of the funding that is left, and so we want to continue to push the information on that program out to our businesses so they can take advantage of it. But the thing that we are watching as far as the board is concerned is how much of the other $157 million in CARES Act funding that we received to the feds we're going to have to spend on other needs, such as our alternative care site at the fairgrounds. If we have to open up those beds, then that's going to mean a lot of spending. That's going to be very expensive. I think it's, if I'm going off memory here, it's going to cost us in the neighborhood of it. Teresa, tell me if I'm wrong, about $2 million a month or so in staffing costs if we have to ramp that up with nurses and doctors, et cetera. But if we don't have to open that, then my intention and the intention of others is to redirect those funds into this business relief program. So the better the COVID numbers go and our efforts in other areas, the more we're going to have to spend for additional small business loans. And as Kelly mentioned, and this was actually something that I suggested to Ryan Alsop and Jim Zervis in the CAO's office, is to focus funding now on those restaurants and bars that had to close again because of the governor's recent order. The impact that that's going to have on those folks to have to close, then open again and ramp back up, restock, etc., and then to be told, sorry, you're closed now, that's got to be a horrendous challenge for them. And so regardless of whether they received a PPP loan, we're looking to help them out because that start and stop is going to be very, very difficult. Teresa, just another thing on the PPP support program, we did set aside $10 million of that $157 million to help businesses reopen. 5 of that is what we've allocated for the PPP so far. But as we watch those items utilize the disposable face masks, the vinyl gloves, the disinfecting wipes, etc. As we watch how that's utilized by our business community, we could be in a position to allocate the additional 5 to that or something, $5 million to that or something else that we identify as a need for businesses as they reopen. Richard talked about Hard Rock, so I'll skip that. The biggest thing we're watching right now is our hospital bed capacity, and it's really not about the physical bed, it's about the staffing that's required, the nurses that are required to staff the patients. So regular patient, it's 4 for 1 nurse. With ICU, it's 2 for 1. And so that's the challenge, is to make sure that we have the staffing that's in place. You've seen a couple of the hospitals in Bakersfield, some of the big ones, have discontinued their elective surgeries because of their COVID surge. The hospitals in the county health department and our ad hoc committee are all working very closely to make sure that we keep a handle on our hospitalization rates and respond accordingly. The county is now looking at assisting the hospitals in their staffing needs for those critical nurse positions. We've had a couple of pretty big solar projects in East Kern that have either been approved or now are moving forward, so that's great. And also a large repowering for wind in the Tehachapi area. I think I might have mentioned that on our Mojave call that we had with the chamber. But this is if you're going through Tehachapi on your way to Mojave, up those old lattice style windmills that are on the south side of the 58. Those are being some removed and replaced with the larger turbines, and so that will be a little boost to our tax base on that project. I've been working close with the folks working on that. Bill, you probably remember Ed Duggan from back in the Oak Creek days, and that's his project.
Good.
And so he reached out to me for a little bit of help getting some permitting, and we got that going for him last week. Budget is not going to be good for us. We're looking at a projected $56 million budget deficit for the county over the next 2 years. There's a lot of variables there. If there's some kind of a federal bailout, we had a little bit of better news come through with the tax numbers, and so we're going to be able to allocate another almost $800,000 to libraries. That's been a big issue for folks because of our original plan to only have 8 open. But something that folks need to remember if they're interested in libraries, these are all curbside pickup. This is still not going into the library. And so our intent with this additional money will be to open more branches up, at least for some days, for curbside pickup. But I've heard a lot about libraries from my constituents, and you know, the thought is always to view the libraries in the modern era as a job center as much as just a place to go pick up books. And so this is a place where people get online, fill out job applications, etc. And so we still see that as a vital service. But the focus for us is to not cut sheriff, fire, DA, other public safety in the face of this big budget deficit. And so unfortunately, the other departments that are not public safety are looking at taking a significant hit to their budgets so we can keep public safety whole. We adopted our preliminary budget last Tuesday. The next budget hearing is going to be the night of August 3rd, which is our traditional evening budget hearing, followed by the next morning, Tuesday, August 4th. I expect us to adopt our final budget at that point. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has, but out of respect for everybody's time and the stuff that was already talked about as far as things going on in the county, I'll go ahead and stop there.
Thanks, Zach. Any questions?
All right. Thanks, everybody. God bless.
Thanks, Zach.
I'm going to mute.
Thanks. So next, Boron, we have, I think, from Rio Tinto, right? Was it Monica or Nathan?
Yeah, that's right. Monica.
Okay. Hey, Monica.
Hey.
Well, you have the floor.
Well, I guess since it's my first time talking with this group, I'll just very briefly give you an overview of how we've been doing. We've continued 100% normal production and operations at Boron since the beginning of the pandemic, operating with about 80% of our normal workforce on site, which is really great. We've had really strong coming together to keep that going. So functional support, people in roles like me have been off-site since March, and the rest of our operational teams are on a complete separate rotation of red and blue. That goes from the general manager all the way down to, our haul truck drivers. We're operating 2 separate teams to keep 2 separate workforces. And in addition to that, everyone's wearing face coverings on site. We're doing temperature checks at the gate, and we've managed to keep things and our controls pretty tight there through the crisis so far, and we haven't seen any cases at our operations. So that's really good. The Borates business has also stayed really resilient throughout so far. Our business is still doing really well, and we haven't seen any negative knock-on effects yet. Of course, no one knows how all of this is going to continue to play out globally. But speaking strictly from our position here in California, we're doing all right. So I think that's the key update from boron. I will add our lithium development project is still moving forward and it's still on track with some slight delays, not even necessarily due to COVID-19, but just due to delays in any innovative project. But we're hoping to have some more news and stories to share on that later this summer, hopefully in August, on our progress.
Well, Monica, weren't you previously in Madagascar, did you say?
I used to work for Rio Tinto in Madagascar as well before I came here, yes, but I'm a California native from the Bay Area.
Great, well, welcome aboard.
Thanks a lot.
So next we have Cal City. I know Alexia is here, that Anna was supposed to be, but she's not available. So Alexia, are you on the line?
Alexia had to step away. I don't know if she's going to be rejoining us or not. But she said that she didn't have any major developments to report on at the time. You know, this is also kind of my portion of the Mojave update, but we're just working on helping out those businesses, reaching out to them to ensure that they know about the programs that are available. And that's been the status quo for a while now, you know, just trying to help whoever reaches out to the chamber, to us directly, to make sure that we can assist them. And then also the three of us working in East KERN are working on a project. I don't have an update for it now, but hopefully by August we will have a major update on something that kind of crossed our paths that we've been actively working on the last few weeks. So more to come.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks, Amanda. And we have from Kern River Valley, Justin, are you still?
Yep, I'm right here.
All dressed up for the huh?
Yeah, I've got the Kernville look going, as I've been informed. So I'm going to keep my update fairly short. We've, for the most part, we've kind of been in, kind of keeping the wheels, going mode. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the founder of Kernville Co-work. Part of the reason I'm on these calls is that Kernville Co-work is taking on a little bit more of an economic development role in our local community. I was recently on, as Richard mentioned, the Future of Co-working webinar, the roundtable. I thought that went very well. It was streamed by KGET, and people found that very informative. And while I can't necessarily speak for the other co-working spaces in the county, I think we're actually doing quite well. And part of that is because of this trend that we're seeing right now of the urban exodus. We're having a lot of people that are realizing that they don't have to go into corporate headquarters every day. We're having a lot of employers that are realizing they don't need all of their employees clustered around and coming into the office every day. And people are realizing that they don't want to live in their sardine cans stacked up on top of other people. And so they're a lot of people, especially from the LA area, are looking for greener pastures. And we're seeing a lot of movement in that direction up here locally in the Kern River Valley, because we've got all the outdoor opportunities, as well as infrastructure like Kernville Co-work that allows them to continue working remotely, while still having a much better work-life balance and much better cost of living. And so hopefully what we're seeing is a little bit of I learned a new word earlier in the call, agglomeration. Thank you very much for that. But we're kind of seeing kind of the opposite side of that, at least happening very locally. So that's something that we're focusing on. We're focusing on trying to encourage these remote workers, because what it does is it increases. It's basically a direct injection into our local economy, because their paychecks are still coming from LA, they're still coming from San Francisco and Silicon Valley. And it also creates a pool of talent that can be used for innovation and entrepreneurship. So, and that's basically what we're focusing on right now.
And you said the brewery is they're using Mojave. We've got a couple of folk, Bill Deaver.
Yeah, I'm also on the Airport Spaceport Board of Directors, and
we're busy. People are still flying. In fact, FAA says we have to allow them to fly, and we welcome them. And we're welcoming 3 Qantas 747s that have been retired and parked out at our boneyard. And a reporter from Australia called me, wanted to know what are they going to do with those airplanes? Are they going to be sold? Are they going to be rebuilt? And I said, well, they'll probably end up as soda cans. And I thought she was going to cry there for a minute. Some good news we have, we've been waiting for a long time. If you drive Highway 14 between Mojave and Rosamond, if you drive in the number 2 lane, you probably might have to end up going to get your alignment changed. But there's a big project that will begin next month, probably, to rebuild that highway, a big section of it, and we're looking forward to that. Let's see. Oh, I appreciate different people sending me information on all the different programs that are going, because we have a big list of people, chamber members and people who just want to be on our mailing list, email list. And if you've got something like that, shoot it to me and we'll get it out to everybody. So let them know what's going on. We also let them know what's going on with our highway projects and all that sort of thing. So as I say, tell everybody that calls in, have a good day. Don't touch it.
Bill, is the Voyager still operating?
What's that?
The Voyager restaurant?
Oh, the Voyager? You can go and get something in a bag and carry it off. And they're open that way. And by the way, one of our board members is is the HR person for Golden Queen Mine. They're still running. And,
that's what Alan's on the call. I wanted to see if Alan from Golden Queen had a update.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
that's
Alan, Yep, we're still busy, fully functional at Golden Queen. In fact, we're growing. Current employee levels at 249. We're in the middle of permit boundary expansion. I should say actually closer to the tail end of that process, and thanks to Zach for his efforts in making that happen. I think it's going through state approval middle of next month. We've had a lot of test drilling going on to improve our reserves, and that's looking very positive. So a lot of strong prospects for the future for continued growth there. As somebody mentioned, there's been a lot of construction work going on in the area, and Route 14 is going to be under construction between south of Mojave and then north end of Rosamond. So tremendous amount of work there, and that's helping our aggregates business. So all in all, things are looking very good for us.
Price of gold going up?
Yes, and that always helps. Yeah, it's an expensive business to be in. So when the commodity price goes up, it's always a good thing for us.
Richard, I'd like to add a little note here that would be very helpful to Golden Queen. We're working with Zach to get Holt Road in Mojave extended. Well, it's extended down to the mine, down to Silver Queen Road, but part of it was just really in bad shape, and a lot of people commuting from Lancaster and Palmdale and LA use that, and people use it when the highway's blocked off. So, and that'll help you folks up at the mine also.
Definitely.
Great, thanks, Bill and Alan. Amanda, do you have anything to add before we move on? I think she has her profile pic.
No, I don't have anything to add at the moment.
Okay, thanks. Next, Peggy, Mayor Frieden, are you on the call? Rich Crest? I know we have Dave Janis. Dave?
Richard?
Hey.
Yeah, hi, Richard. Peggy gave me some things to talk about as well, and it looks like she was having audio problems. She could not hear anybody. So I'll fill on some things that she presented to us. This is our 1 year anniversary, and we made it safely through without any extreme shaking in addition. So good year. On the 4th of July, interestingly enough, our fireworks show had to be canceled, and the base stepped in and actually did a fireworks show on the dry lake on the base that's right next to the Ridgecrest Boulevard east-west and lit up the valley. And for those of us that are as old as I am, that was the way the fireworks show in the valley used to be done every year in the old days when, for example, when that aircraft, which is now at the front gate of the base, was in fact flying. So it was a great experience. The city is working with the county on at least they're getting a little revenue back in, although we don't have the severe COVID impact that some of Bakersfield and the nursing homes in particular are seeing. The earthquake recovery effort on the base, we all know we got $3 billion appropriated already for that out of the $4 billion that's going to be expected in total. And the first major contract for that to rebuild the magazines was in fact let, and we're expecting the workforce, the construction workforce, for that to arrive in the August timeframe roughly. They're meeting with base officials here in the near future to determine exactly which day they do that. And we've been working. We have weekly meetings between some of the community leaders, the city leaders, and the Navy folks every week to help coordinate what are the needs of the construction, large influx of workers that we're going to have next year and on into 24 also. The largest numbers of contractors that are going to be here are expected to overlap the building schedules in the fiscal 22 and on into 23 timeframe. So we're talking, a couple thousand workers at one time in a small town. The housing shortage issues that most of us have already on top of. Really now we're worried about how do we feed them because we're losing restaurants at a time when we'd hope to be building up to be able to handle that large influx of workers. So as I said, we have weekly meetings to coordinate that. The Navy's been very open about what their timeline is. The next portion of about $1.2 billion in major construction for that the bids are already in on it, and we're expected to award them in the September timeframe. And so we'll see the really large chunks of construction workforce arrive in the winter timeframe around the holidays or just after. So that's the anticipated schedule. It could be impacted by protests in the government process, but that's the plan right now. We had a contract with the city did with Buxton to provide data off sales, et cetera, to help with our economic development. We just entered into phase 3 of that, and we were really hoping to capitalize in this phase where we work with the retailers who have identified and are eager to come into the community, having that data in hand. And of course, we're now waiting for COVID to release a little bit so that we can get a little more there. But it's a positive step if in fact we do lower some of the restrictions. We also had an electronic vehicle charger grant that was allotted to the city in the amount of $50,000, and a bunch of the other folks in the community had applied, and they're getting their notifications this week. So it should be pretty good. Regarding the water situation, as you know, we're in a critically overdrafted basin, and we've been working funding for the infrastructure, which is prohibitively expensive, in the 50 to 100 to 200 million range for that. We've been working grant opportunities largely through the Department of Defense budget on that, and have several placeholders in the National Defense Authorization Act and appropriations that are moving through the House and Senate, but they require, in some cases, the definition of project ready or what used to be called shovel-ready projects, and we don't have some of those yet. Interestingly enough, there is a growing awareness in the entire western part of the country on the legislative level that there is a water issue. It is not just San Joaquin Valley, Indian Wells Valley. it is the entire Great Basin. And so there's a coalition that's forming in some of the western states with regards to safe water infrastructure. And there are appropriations bills that are separate from the DOD budget, more generally out of the federal budget, that are coming out on the Senate side and gaining support on the House side. And that's a good sign for us in terms of the legislative support, congressional support that we can get for projects that we need here. And Corinza, are you still on?
Let me see. I don't believe I'm looking at the list. What you said, Corinza?
Yeah, I'll summarize quickly. The city, to this end that we just talked about with the water infrastructure, the city was invited to apply by the Office of Economic Adjustment, which is a very good sign that you're going to get approved if it's a decent grant request. The city was invited to apply for a $500,000 grant for water and energy infrastructure, resilience and stability, and that would help us identify and work through the engineering level effort to definitize exactly what some of those, in the case of water, shovel-ready projects would look like. So it's a gap bridger, and it looks like we're going to get that. That's in the realm of around $500,000. And Amanda mentioned earlier an initiative that's going that hopefully we can report on in 2 weeks. That's going across all Eastern Kern, and look forward to a good report out on that. It's been a heavy workload this week trying to get that in, and we'll see where it goes. That's all I have. Thank you.
Is that your backdrop out your window?
Yeah, no, that's an F4D Skyray, not the later F4 Phantom after the Navy and the Air Force changed their designation system. But that is one that originally launched. Let me tilt it down here. You see this rocket right behind my head and underneath the wing there? That's a 5-stage satellite boost to orbit rocket that took up Notsnik, the Naval Ordnance Test Station, which was the name of China Lake back then, took it into space in 1958 to get into orbit in response to Sputnik. And that F4D, or the same type model series, is at the front gate out in front of China Lake today.
I thought you were in the movie Pleasantville. Thanks so much. I don't know, John's Joyce?
Yes, I'm here. Do you hear me?
Rosamond?
Yes. Hi.
How are you?
Yes. Legacy Homes formed up and is getting ready to pour footings on their first 2 models. Their housing development is offering homes between $300,000 and $400,000 and about 1,800 square feet. And this is the first development we've had in Roseman for some time, so we're very happy about that. The school district on the 15th is going to tell us when and how the classes are going to go back to school. There is going to be classroom work, but we're not sure if it's going to be partially online or all in the classroom. And finally, the reclamation plant out at the Roseman Community Services District getting ready to pour cement. And this is great news. It'll take about another year, but eventually this reclaimed water will be able to be put back in the aquifer and then provide Roseman with enough credits to pull the same amount out of the aquifer under the direction of the water master. And this is very good because Roseman is short of water. And thank you for such a well-organized meeting in the face of all the pandemic.
Are you still recording this meeting with your camera?
Absolutely. I never miss it.
Great. Thanks, John.
Okay.
Attach fee, I saw Corey, I don't know if Greg's on the call too, city attach fee.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Hope everybody's doing well. It's kind of odd to have a lot about the restaurant industry and how sort of uncertain it is right now, up and down. And we have 3 and then soon to be 4 active restaurant projects. It's really odd, but Panda Express broke ground yesterday, which is, we kind of found that construction project, along with a couple others going on right now, are helping sort of backfill some of the lost revenue from tourism in hotels. So we've got some large crews expected, for the Panda project that will be staying in town for an extended amount of time. So that's going to help a little bit, not completely make up for, but ease some of that, that deficit from a lack of occupancy tax that we normally have here. Tacos El Superior, which continues in their remodel, they should be done within the next month or so. They took the old Dunkin' Donuts up right up the road from where the Panda site's at, so that'll be good timing for them. Prime Grill, which is out at 58 in Stuber, it'll be a full-service restaurant when they're allowed to be again, but they are actually going to be really targeting the trucking industry, which is a smart move out there by the Pilot and the Loves. So, and there's a new remodel project coming soon for a restaurant as well. So that's 4 that are going to be active, which is kind of crazy during this time. But we are able to get outdoor dining. We have pretty much given the blessing to every restaurant to put a table, chair, or whatever you can to and wherever you need to put it to get residents and getting folks into your restaurant or on the outside of your restaurant for outdoor dining. So I met with a group today on figuring out how to lay out their patio. So it's been great. We've kind of really waived all permit requirements just to let people survive at this point. It's worked out really well. We've done a few things with our city public spaces as well, promoting the fact that there's public spaces near restaurants. So that's gone very well to help these folks get through that. Valley Strong Credit Union is close to pulling permits for their outlot, which is next to Walmart as well. Met with them a few weeks back, so that project is very close. In the terms of housing, it's going quickly and it's going at a premium right now in Tehachapi. The prices are about 15% higher than they were this time during COVID last year. So as the Kern River Valley kind of spoke about, we're seeing that kind of same influx. I'm sure some of the other communities are people who, with everything happening from COVID to civil unrest, they want to get out of the city. So we're seeing that. It's also made some new projects sort of get going a little quicker, some new housing developments which continue to be out there as well. The rail crossing project, which is all of our 3 downtown rail crossings, are getting new arms, new signals. There'll be some new pedestrian-friendly, bike-friendly, handicap-friendly crossings. Those are all underway. The Hayes project, or the Hayes crossing, has been closed for several weeks. They're pulling out old track, and it's going to be great when it's done. The medians have been poured, which is kind of funny because people complained that we poured medians. They said, well, I can't go around anymore. We said, well, that is exactly the reason why medians were poured, because you can't go around the gates anymore. So anyway, those are all been poured, and it'll be great when it's done though. And then finally, this one is a little bit out of the it's out of the city limits, but obviously this has a major impact. The Tobacco Trade Bureau has released the public report for the American Viticultural Area designation for the Tehachapi wine growers. The Wine Growers Commission and a few of the vineyards got together a few years back and worked with the Department of the Treasury to get an AVA. And an AVA is basically that agricultural area you see on your bottle of wine. If it says Napa Valley or Paso Robles, you have to actually get permission from the federal government to have that, and they got to know that wine is produced inside of that region. And it's not an easy process. This has been several years in the making. So they're finally at the stage where the public report is out, and it does talk about geography and soils. And anyway, there's a request for public comments, which is open. I encourage folks to check it out and comment if you're in support of it. The city will be taking this. The designation is Tehachapi Mountains. That's what they want to put on the labels, and that includes 6 wineries at this point, or 6 vineyards, 1 actual winery who's bottling on site. And so the public comments are open. They're open until August, and we'll be taking it to actually our city council in a couple of weeks to get their sort of public comment in support of this designation, because that'll help obviously the surrounding wineries. There's also the one downtown, Stray Leaves, which is actually completed. They're just kind of waiting for COVID to be over before they decide to open up, so they don't have to play the open and close game. But they are they're ready to go downtown. And then Dorner Family Vineyard just opened a long-awaited tasting room, and all the reviews have been absolutely raved, and they are able to stay open because they do have kitchen and food service out there. So it's a growing industry, and this ABA designation is going to help big time. And so we're working on supporting that as well from the city level to help our neighbors and another industry sort of take root in Tehachapi, because we know the hotels and stuff are in the city, and so it'll help when folks come to visit and check out our wine industry. There'll be some economic benefit in the city as well. So that's all I got.
Well, I did see that alcohol consumption is up 250%, so probably demand.
Great time to open a tasting room or get your name put on a bottle. That's for sure.
Well, Christina, I see you on the call. Did you want to comment on hospitals?
Sure. We just continue to be in the phase of encouraging folks not to delay care. We are currently testing patients in our outpatient clinic. We've tested over 700 patients in the last month, and I understand we've had about 23 positive test results. So about 3% of those that we're testing in the outpatient clinic are coming back positive. We are also testing, of course, in our emergency department regularly. We have been since the beginning, since March. So we're working it out. We've got some challenges, but we are continuing with our surgery, and we are not overrun by any means. We have not executed our surge plan. Our ICU is seeing some activity, but nothing that we're not handling. So just appreciate so much the community's support. In addition to all the wonderful supportive ways the community has reached out to support our team on the front lines, we also were able to support a grant to all 4 senior centers. We were able to support the Tehachapi, Mojave, Boron, and Cal City senior centers and the Salvation Army, all with $5,000 grants. So we're really glad that we were able to just make sure to fill in some gaps. I spoke to our local Salvation Army chapter here, and she said that it was wonderful because the school districts were really taking care of the kiddos and students through those meal programs that they were able to continue with. But there was indeed a gap in our seniors' needs. So we're just continuing to encourage folks to come in. We are seeing more acute patients in our emergency department because people are waiting until situations are getting worse. So that message needs to continue to be pushed out there. Just to want to encourage folks to share that with their friends and family, that we have the PPE necessary. We're safe. We actually received $370,000 worth of PPE from the spaceship company, which was amazing, and is helping to keep our staff safe and sustain our PPE levels. So I think that's plenty for me.
Great. Thank you. So I think we went through a lot of the communities and comments, member comments. Our next meeting is scheduled for September the 10th, and we will hopefully meet in person, although that may be unlikely. But again, it's great to get this pretty much record attendance, albeit virtually. So any final comments?
Yeah, Richard, this is Doug Waterman, CMTC. Can I just say something?
Sure.
I only ask you because I know I'm not allowed to talk unless I say I can. Anyway, I think that Bakersfield should be very proud of the fact that in your community you have a company called Domino Plastics, and they have shifted part of their production, and they're actually making face shields. So if you all don't know about it, be aware that they are actually making face shields in Bakersfield and have been, and they have 2 different models, and they're also making partitions that can be used both at the retail level and hospitals and in some of the some of the factories that you have in town as well. So I just wanted to mention that to you, that a lot of people probably don't know about it, but they're local, right down the 58, and I had the pleasure of helping them source some of the materials, which has not been an easy process.
Well, and they just joined our organization, so yeah, thank you. That's Tommy Bass we've worked with. I know Melinda for 15 years with the company, so it would be great to get within the county that supply. Thanks, Doug. Any other final comments? Great. Well, thank you all for attending. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you before the next meeting. Bye.
Richard.
Bye, Richard.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Everybody.